Hello, let's talk, everyone. How to prepare for a disaster if you live with a disability. This is what I'm going to be speaking about today. For those dependent on medication or who need mobility assistance, like evacuating at a moment's notice or stockpiling supplies, can be complicated. Take a personal inventory of your day-to-day needs and put them into an emergency preparedness plan. Keep a detailed list of your medications and their dosages, who your doctors are and how they can be reached, what equipment you need, and what your insurance policy is, to name a few. Each plan might look a little different to each disability. If it's a wheelchair, make sure you can get it on your own if need be, and that is stored so it won't roll away. Also, you can have a cane next to the bed if it's not a wheelchair available. For some people, the mobility might look a little different, not being able to move at all. You should keep some type of important processes in line to get help when something like this is going on, because it's not often that you can, if in case of a disaster or earthquake or whatever it may be, that you might have like someone there, like a CNA or whatever, helping you. You might not have anyone, a caretaker or anyone. So you need to have things and processes in place. Here are 4 things you should do, and I'm going to read these 4 things. Everyone should have certain supplies on hand, but a person with a disability will have to customize emergency kits. They sell emergency kits at like Target, Walmart. You might could check their evacuation plans and recovery models to find 5 trusted allies and share your plan. People who you trust. That's what I mean by trusted allies. You should have at least 5 people who are fully informed about your emergency plan. You need more than one person, just in case one can't make it, the other one can. Including what supplies you have and need, your evacuation plan, and all of your medical information. Write down their contact information so that you have it as well. Do not rely on just one person or on having the contact information stored digitally, because you might not be able to look at it online. Prioritize your health needs and create lists. Have a physical and digital copy of everything. Doctors and their contact information, medication and dosages, what kind of equipment you use, where you store it, and how you use it. This information should be accessible to your allies and emergency responders. That was number 2. Number 3, create your emergency kits. You should have an emergency kit for your home, your car, yourself, your person that you have for your trusted ally, and at work if needed. Have the emergency basics as well as supplies for any specific needs. Number 4, plan how and when to evacuate. Typically, disaster would not trigger an evacuation, but wildfires do. Speaking of, like, if you live in California or something like that, plan at least 2 evacuation routes and practice them. It's good to practice evacuation routes, when you're having an emergency like that. Make sure they're accessible to you and your needs. If you need assistance evacuating, in Chicago it's dial 311, and California I think it's 211, or whatever your city emergency numbers are. Keep it handy. When it comes to seeking shelter during an earthquake, the standard is to drop, cover, and hold on. That may be easier said than done for someone who uses a wheelchair. For example, no matter your physical ability, focus on keeping your neck and head covered. That could mean holding something hard over your back of your neck to deflect any falling debris. We have like 5 things that people with disabilities need to think about when having a disaster with a disability. Cognitive, vision, hearing, breathing, and medication and equipment are a few things to consider when being disabled. For cognitive, a major disaster can be disorienting for anyone, but especially those with cognitive disabilities. Said preparation is a key. For the person with the disability as well as their caretaker, most people with Alzheimer's disease can't live on their own, meaning their caretaker, whether a family member or a professional, needs to prepare themselves and the patient. Keep paperwork associated with the person's medical care, such as the power of attorney documentation, diagnosis documentation, and other medical history information in a binder, in a three-way binder if you have one. That's easy to access. Try to keep it in order in a place that you can find it. An earthquake or another disaster can be a serious stressor for a person with a cognitive disability. For instance, writing a person's name on their clothing so they can be easily identified if they become lost. Also, as part of their emergency kit, keep some unwashed laundry in a sealed bag. That's the way a search dog can have a strong scent to follow. Like, for instance, if they have earthquakes and you know how they be trying to find people up under the rubble and everything like that, that is a very good way to find people up under the rubble. That was a suggestion that I read. Comfort items are especially important. Blankets, noise canceling headphones, and music or a deck of cards. Have items on hand that help a person calm down or relax at home. Explaining the drop, cover, and hold on may present a challenge as well. Modeling behavior and breaking it up into single actions versus a three-step process are ways recommended to make the process easier. Try to return to normal settings and routines as quickly as possible. If you can stay away from a shelter during an evacuation and find more controlled environment, such as a hotel or a friend's house, that's an option for that. Limiting access to news can prevent further distress. People with Alzheimer's often have difficulty differentiating what's happening now and what's happened in the past. So a newscast recapping events could cause confusion. That's another earthquake is happening now, for example. With a progressive disease such as Alzheimer, the bag you pack and the plan you make today might not work in a year. So adaptability and staying on top of emergency preparedness is very important when caring for someone with a cognitive disability. Number 2, we're going to talk about vision. That was number 1. The ADA recommends that you mark your disaster supplies with fluorescent tape, large print, or braille. You can also store it in a designated area so that you always know where to go. Flashlights with extra wide beam and high power bulbs can help someone with low vision in case of a loss of electricity. Keeping extra batteries in your pack will make sure you don't lose light. If you wear contact lenses or glasses, keep a backup pair in your emergency kit. That's a good thing to do. Number 3, hearing. Someone deaf and not hearing is crucial during a disaster. Most warning systems use audible cues to alert people to danger. They have warning apps. You can look them up on Google. They have vibrating alerts. What's recommended is having a way to communicate with emergency personnel. Like, for instance, picture communication cards are one possibility. For post-disaster updates, when the power might be out, you'll want a battery-powered or hand-cranked radio. Look for a weather radio with an audio-to-text feature so you can stay updated on evacuation orders and other warnings. In case of fires, Like for instance, in California, ashes and smoke pose a direct threat to compromise airways of someone with a breathing disability, and both disasters often result in a loss of power. Keeping towels, masks, rags, and anything you can grab to keep your airway protected short term is important to have in an emergency kit. An N95 mask is the most effective mask for those with compromised respiratory systems and should be kept for emergencies. I know how we all like to wear those designer masks, but that is not the one. The one to wear is the N95. That's the most effective one. Breathing equipment, including oxygen and CPAP machines. Most people with disability with respiratory, they use the CPAP machines. This should be accounted for when creating your emergency plan. Find out where you can go get more oxygen in case of a disaster, and keep extra tubing and supplies in your own kit. For CPAP or similar machines, invest in a backup generator in case the power goes out. Now, the only thing with a generator, you need to keep that on the outside and make sure the fumes don't come inside the house, because that's very dangerous. In many countries, they use generators, and from my personal experience, that is something dangerous because those fumes can really kill you. Okay, so you have to be very careful with that. But it's good to have for something like that for a person with respiratory and has to use CPAP machines. Number 4, medications and equipment. If you're dependent on medication, make sure you won't run out. Emergency directives recommend having 3 to 4 days worth of medication on hand. For prescriptions, that is often easier said than done. Insurance thresholds and allowances often allow as much as their patient need for the time period that they need it. Nothing less, but definitely nothing more. It is recommended taking your doctor to see if you can get an advance on your prescriptions for emergency purposes. It's not a guarantee, but it's worth asking. Devices that run on electricity need to have a backup power source. In case the power goes out, this is good to keep in mind, not just for disasters, but it's also for rolling blackouts during hotter months. If you have to evacuate, you'll have to just a few moments to do so. Make sure your equipment is transport ready and could go with you out the door safely and quickly. Keep a list of medications you're taking and what dose, even at home. It's easy to forget which medications and how much of it you're taking at any time. Not to mention when you're at an emergency shelter because you've been evacuated from your home. Having that list will allow medical staff at shelters or at hospitals to get what you need sooner. Service animals. For some disability people who have service animals, many people with disabilities rely on them. Service animals, they need them for assistance. Just like any human, service animals need extra supplies in case of a disaster. Although service animal is better trained than a family pet and therefore more likely to handle the stress of a disaster better, their needs are just as important as any other animals. When building your disaster kit in your bag, be sure to include animal-specific items. You need bowls for water and food carriers, leashes, and waste collection supplies. Creature comforts such as favorite toy or blanket can help ease the emotional stress an animal might face during an earthquake. Thank you for listening to my video. Please like and subscribe. I appreciate everyone listening, and I hope this helps someone with a disability in case of a disaster emergency. Thank you.